something that depends on big...
You're the speculator. See, you and I think differently. I think of the possibilities, but I'm afraid to put things in. When I see the dark, I always figure the dark as too big for me to guess at. You see, to guess, it's not much use in guessing particular things. But you're different, and I would like to discuss with you sometime how do you do that, because I'm really a little afraid to make specific guesses.
Your background?
I don't know.
The way you kind of grow up.
I don't know. I'm afraid to make specific guesses, because the moment I'm making that guess, I can see 7 other alternatives. And so, since I see these other alternatives, I don't know which one to piddle with. I don't like to spend a lot of energy on one.
My choice is very simple. I don't set any requirement that the answer be right. It's just what I'm interested to follow.
That's the difference. That's the difference. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to find
If I'm interested in...
I'm trying to find out not how nature could be, but how nature is. See, what's right.
Well, I don't think you'll ever find it, you see. I don't think you'll ever find it.
I see. And your idea is to find out what nature could be. Different possibilities.
No, what I think is interesting. Yeah.
Even if it's wrong.
Common ground is enthusiastically explored. But is it only shared experience and knowledge that forms a bond between working scientists and separates them from us, the interested layman, or even the artist?
I mean, scientific fields are becoming so specialized and they're so varied. Are you really saying that you have more in common with, say, a paleontologist or someone in a branch of science very far removed from yours than you would with a playwright or a poet?
Absolutely, especially if he's a good paleontologist. Because he's a good paleontologist, he's not just looking at old rocks. He's looking at the history of the Earth. He's looking, when he stands and he looks at his own fingers, and he knows it's got 5 bumps, and he thinks of how did it evolve with 5 bumps. It's got the same as whales, and so on. And we keep talking about the importance of the fact that the thumb opposes. Then we can start discussing, is it really so important that the thumb or is it language that has been evolved, the system of symbols, or the size of the brain? This is a paleontologist. I can talk about this stuff. It's close to his field. Dolphins have bigger brains than we are. They have a signaling system, and you get interested in that. And you start to discuss all that they know about dolphins, and you complain that the way the United States Navy has been doing its experiments is not right, and we ought to find out more about dolphins. And you go on and on. You talk, those are things of the day. They're just as good, but you can go on and on. When I talk to a playwright or something, I find, because I don't go to plays or something, I don't find it easy to talk to them. I don't get much out of it.
I was going to say, this is because you can talk to scientists in other fields, presumably because you read the scientific magazines, presumably, and hear the scientific gossip rather than...
No, because we don't have to have magazines or gossip. We think originally. We think of a new idea. We talk to each other and we try to look at something from a new point of view, and we delight each other in a new point of view. And when you're talking to somebody else who's trying to think of something new, different, and he thinks he's thought about the whales or the dolphins, and he has some little thing he's thought of that's a little different than the thing that you've thought of. And so when you're talking back and forth, he's excited by your point of view about dreams, and you're excited by his little observation that he has made about dreams, if he has happened to have thought about that. So the point is, and our backgrounds give us a slightly different point of view. I mean, a scientific background. Like I specialize in physics, to say he specializes in paleontology. So his information on dreams might be more deeper, more evolutionary. For example, he can't, we don't have a way of telling, I suppose, about the evolution of dreams, but he might know, for example, about other animals. He might have thought about whether other animals dream and what the signs are, and all other things that I hadn't thought of. I can't make it up now because I'm not the paleontologist, but I believe that, yes, I find always that a good man, I take it all back. I take it all back. A good man, I've talked to good men in other fields. There's certain kinds of men in every field that I can talk to as well as I can talk to a good scientist. I met a historian, or a writer of history from France once, and I had a marvelous conversation with him. Maurois, his name was Andre Maurois. And then I met an artist, Robert Irwin, who's a very important artist in Los Angeles in modern art, and I could talk to him at the same depth of excitement. So I take it all back. If you give me the right man, in any field, I can talk to him. I know what the condition is. That he did whatever he did as far as he can go. That he studied every aspect of it as far as he has stretched himself to the end. He's not a dilettante in any way. And so he talked deep as far as he can go, and therefore he's up against mysteries all the way around the edge. And awe. And we can talk about mystery and awe. That's what we have in common.
You were talking a bit about these fallow periods when things get very painful.
After discussing working problems, it is natural that Feinman and Hoyle should savour that most thrilling pleasure of all, the moment of revelation.
You try all sorts of things and you're hopeful about trying it. Have you had a moment when, in a complicated problem, where quite suddenly the thing comes into your head and you're almost sure you've got to be right?
Oh, yes. That's
this is a great...
Oh, God. Yeah. And then you try to figure out what the conditions were of that moment that you can do it again.
Yeah.
For example, I worked out the theory of helium once and suddenly saw everything. I was struggling for 2 years.
That's right.
And suddenly saw everything. And one afternoon, I can remember everything about it, by the way. It's psychologically funny. You can remember the color of the paper you were writing on. Isn't that true? And the room and everything else. And then you wonder, what's the psychological condition? Well, I know at that particular time, I simply looked up and I said, wait a minute. It can't be quite that difficult. It must be very easy. I'll stand back and I'll just treat it very lightly. I'll just tap it and it'll say bunk, bunk, and there it was. So how many times since then I'm walking on the beach and I said, well, look, it can't be so complicated. Tap it, tap, nothing happens.
Nothing happens,
So the lights are great, but the secret way, what's the condition?
It's that missing bit in the brain, isn't it?
Right.
That suddenly lights up. And
I have no idea. I thought about it because some man suggested I think about that. Because if I can only figure out the formula for what condition to be in to get good ideas, I'd be much more efficient and more happy. So I often paid attention to what the condition is, and have never found any correlation with anything. By the way, it's the delight. It's absolute ecstasy. It's just absolutely wild.
And how long does it last for?
How
long does it last for?
It's not very short. It's a very big moment, and then
3 days.
And so on.
Yeah.
And then there are lesser pleasures as you work on more things and more people notice it and
but
you talk about it.
You're on the high peak for about 3 days.
That's right, yes. It's like a supernova, I suppose.
Yes.
No, that's 54 days. That's better.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that it's the hope of that kind of gold
that keeps you going.
That can keep you going through these doldrums, you see. And that I think what I learned when I was a child from my father was that if you did work a little bit at these things, there would be a time at which you'd get this. And I had to learn that first, or I'd never been able to do it.
Yeah. And then afterwards, you wonder, why the devil was I so stupid that I didn't see this?
That's not only true of you, it's true of the history of the science. You can always look at a particular moment in history and wonder why they hadn't thought of it 20 years earlier or 10 years earlier, depending on the case. It's because we're dumb somehow.
It's most mysterious, this. It just means that however good you may get comparatively compared to
apes
and so on, we're still very bad at it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're doing the best we can. And
and they're kind of stumbling.
It's very good.
This depressing and sobering thought.
Well, it's been fun.